Hi, everyone. I'm Robert Chatwani, Chief Marketing Officer at Atlassian. Today, I have the pleasure of welcoming Mitch Cardwell, VP of Brand Identity and Systems at CBS. Mitch is going to share how service management and Jira Service Management in particular have unlocked high-velocity teams at his organization. Mitch, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Robert. Great to be here.
Yeah, really exciting to have you here. Now, we have a really international audience, and certainly everybody in North America and beyond is likely familiar with CBS. But for those who aren't familiar, will you tell us a little bit about the company and the media organization?
Yeah, CBS is a division of Viacom CBS. We actually function all over the world. Here in the United States, CBS is the #1 television network, and we have over 210 affiliates across the U.S. And we program in the neighborhood of 12 to 18 hours of programming a day.
Wow. So global, within the US, obviously, huge reach across the entire country and large amounts of volume. So I know that your role and your team's role at CBS is particularly important to keep operations running and keep the media network going. But before we dive into the details of Jira Service Management, tell us a little bit more about the CBS marketing group and particularly your role in brand identity and systems.
CBS Marketing is over 200 people, based primarily on the East and West Coast of the United States. We have a few people overseas as well, but we are a distributed group. We also have some people working remotely in the United States, in the South and in the Midwest. And we specialize in doing the marketing for entertainment, news, sports, and our daytime programming.
That's great. And so you're really, when you say responsible for doing the marketing, I imagine that there's a large number of creative teams and non-technical teams that need to coordinate work together. Is that right?
Exactly. We work in groups. We call them pods, and each pod is tasked with a specific genre or a specific set of shows that they work on, and that group produces all the marketing for that for their particular assignments, and that includes on-air promos and social media, key art. Static imagery, audio, radio spots, anything involved in the marketing of the show.
It sounds like an agency within a media organization. Is that the right way to think about it?
Exactly. We are an agency. We are an agency within CBS specializing in handling the advertising for media, for both the brand and for the programming that's on CBS.
And what's powerful about this story is that it really, and we'll get into these details, but showcases how service management reaches well beyond just engineering teams and IT teams to empower all kinds of functions and all kinds of roles across the organization. Now, I imagine that the volume of work and service management activity, the number of tickets, the number of actual marketing collateral and videos produced, the volume must be incredible.
It is incredible. We produce tens of thousands of ad units per year. And each one of those ad units has multiple issues or tickets that goes with it. So when you produce a promo, that promo can have production orders, it can have graphics orders, it can have audio orders, it can have audio announce orders, it can have creative orders, it can have media planning orders that are associated with it. And that's what actually led us to Jira and Jira Service Management, was the realization that we were, for every single unit of creative we were doing, there was an immense amount of paperwork going on, and all of that paperwork was disparate. And in different systems, and using different taxonomy. And we needed to figure out a way to how to optimize that into a single place, hopefully on a single platform using a single taxonomy. And that's what led us to Jira and Jira Service Management.
So Mitch, you were at the helm of this major transformation of shifting from an old way of doing work to a new way, but what were some of the drivers of this change? What was the impetus?
I think the impetus started for us when 5 to 7 years ago, when we started to see a dramatic uptick in the variations of the type of things that we were doing, and a lot of that was being driven by social media. And social media brings a lot of complexity to the way that you take very traditional ad units. It used to be in the golden era of television. You did a piece of key art, and you did a trailer and a promo, and you were done. And those were in a single format. And then what began to happen with social media is suddenly we were making squares and rectangles and verticals, and the delivery formats for each one of those ad units changed. And as Facebook and Instagram and Twitter evolved, they were constantly changing the delivery specs because they would invent a new ad unit, and we would respond to by using that new ad unit, which would require a new set of technical processes to take our traditional 16 by 9 promo and turn it into a 9 by 16 promo with inserted closed captions or something like that. And that just we were becoming overwhelmed. Yeah. And as that began to happen, we realized we got into a room one day and we just pulled all the documents in for just one show, and we put them out on a table, and it was dozens of spreadsheets and emails and tech spec documents. And we realized that there had to be a better way, so we started down a journey of trying to figure out how to simplify this, just to have one group and the other group speak the same language and have and look at something on the same screen. And from that, we began to realize that there were through lines in what we were doing, and how we could optimize those processes internally using Jira, externally using service management, so that the data flowed in a very unified way through the entire system.
Well, as a marketer myself, I can empathize with just the speed of change in our industry, right? And it strikes me that CBS had a few different dynamics going on. One is that the media and entertainment industry seems to be going towards, through this transformation of more real time, more active engagement, just lots of volume. And then, as you cited, all of the specs and the types of creative that you needed to publish was also changing. And when I hear you describe this, it sounds like you've gone from perhaps a more fragmented approach to production and creative processes to now a more streamlined approach. What were you looking for, when you were evaluating a new solution? What were some of the things that were important to the team and important to you?
I think one of the most important things we were looking for was being able to alter the process dynamically. So we wanted to be able to create highly customized processes that worked with the way that we worked, but then be able to alter those when we needed to, and not have to go through a very elaborate process to change our project management system when our own processes change very often ourselves. And that was one of the things that we found that we really liked about Jira. One of the most important things was the ability to define workflows, create parameters around those workflows, create guardrails around who could change the workflows, and then get everybody on the same workflow so that we had a unified process. Because as I mentioned before, because we work as an ad agency with lots and lots of teams doing things, but they are accessing groups that work in different ways, that have a specific input and a specific output. They need to follow processes, but those processes don't need to necessarily be visible to everybody. And that was one of the key insights that we really loved about Jira, was the ability to define a process, define if one group wants to work Kanban or another group wants to work Agile, and be able to do all that seamlessly without having to go back to IT and put in a change order and wait 2 months.
So Mitch, there's a large number of teams that are using Jira Service Management across the organization, but give us a little bit more color. More specifically, what types of teams are using JSM?
Sure. So it starts with our strategy and our media planning departments that will create a media plan around a show or a special or something that we are marketing. and that information goes into Jira. And then at the same time, one of our creative teams is assigned to the show, and we actually do that with an epic. So the show will be assigned to a creative director and his team, his or her team, and then from there they begin to notch out the pieces of creative that they're going to make: a trailer, a 30-second promo, a 10-second teaser, a 5-second ID, and those projects are assigned out to writer producers and to art directors, and then those begin to go through their specific workflows. At the same time, the media planning department will send down what's called a production order to our production team, which produces tens of thousands of promos every year. That team actually functions with they sprint. They do a daily sprint, which represents their production day. And the promos are planned out when they're going to be produced. And as the creative becomes ready from the creative team, those two issues are linked together using issue linking. And then graphics work orders are generated, post-production work orders are generated, and all that material flows back together into the production department, which then moves the spot through our post-production process, which is actually visualized on a Kanban board with about a dozen steps. It's actually more complicated than you would think to make a promo. And then the promo gets to the end of that process and it's put into our digital asset management system and it's shipped out.
What's amazing here, Mitch, is when I hear you describe that, you're modeling after how some of the world's best software and IT teams work. Yet these are all media, creative, marketing teams, production teams. Truly, it sounds like you're running an Agile organization. And maybe it's my words, not yours, but it sounds like Agile marketing to me.
We do refer to it as the word has bubbled up in our nomenclature, and I don't think it was one of those really fascinating moments when we were working with our partners that were helping us deploy this, and we started to go, oh, a production day, that's a sprint. Right. And our Jira people would go, no, that's insane. A sprint's 2 weeks, and I was like, a sprint is a sandboxed amount of time, whether it's 8 hours or a month, it's still a sandboxed bit of time. And when we started to think about it that way, it was actually a real breakthrough because it allowed us to then harness the power of Jira and Confluence and Jira Service Management to do measurements around performance during that sprint. The retrospective, sprint, our sprint planning is done the day before for the next day's sprint. It's all the Agile, it's all the constructs that you use around Agile just adapted for media. But there are many, many parallels, and it absolutely fascinates people when they start to look at it and realize how many parallels there are.
Yeah, that's remarkable. I get the privilege of speaking to lots of CMOs and lots of marketing organizations, and I can say that what you've done at CBS is truly on the frontier, because one of the biggest challenges I hear from other marketing organizations and creative organizations is complexity is growing. And one of the biggest opportunities they have is to figure out how to move work forward more effectively, break down those silos. And so this is a really inspiring story. And I think particularly for lots of our non-technical teams. So Mitch, earlier you mentioned partnering with an Atlassian solution partner. Tell me about what that was like. Who were they and what role did they play as you were rolling out Jira Service Management across CBS?
Yeah, we worked with ISOS Technologies. They initially helped us with our install, but began a long-term relationship with us that goes on to this day. So we've been with them for over 3 years. And I definitely recommend talking to someone like ISOS when you embark on a big project like this. I think one of the most helpful things to have is someone that really understands the scale of the scope of the project, that also brings to the table an understanding, especially of whatever industry you're in. You want someone who understands how the product works in other industries. For example, one of the people on our team actually had come out of using Jira in the financial space. That insight helped a lot because they weren't they weren't fixated on just this is a software development tool. So they were able to listen to our processes and our procedures and our needs with a sort of a neutral ear, and that was really, really, really helpful. And I'll go back to the example of our production team that's now sprinting. It would have never in a million years occurred to us to try to attempt to do something like that to run our production department. And of course, when we first went to that team, they were like, "You want us to what now?" But once we showed them the beauty of sprint planning, that was a huge breakthrough for them, because then they could visualize out what they're doing over the next few weeks in a really, really sane way that had never even occurred to them before, nor had they ever had in the past. So it was a really big win for them. And ISOS was able to help us take our ideas and our needs and adapt them in a really, really smart way, and also do some of the heavy lift for us that we would have never been able to do on our own.
In this rollout, which sounds extensive, was training involved? And did your partner play a role in helping you train the organization?
They did. That actually was a really, really key part of it. We spread our rollout over 2+ years. We're actually still doing it in some areas. And they absolutely helped us in that way, because as we identified each group, they helped us create the roadmap of how we brought everybody on board. And as we planned each phase and did each onboarding, they wrote and created a custom training, which we store in Confluence. And then they would handle the training of the staff. And a lot of this all went on remotely. To this day, I've never actually met my ISOS peeps in person. We do everything by Zoom. And we would do large trainings on Zoom, and they would take the teams through their process, and then they would help us get them onboarded, and then offer 24/7 support during the onboarding process until the team was secure and comfortable in what they were doing, and then we would move on to the next group.
Well, I think that's an incredible testament to teamwork. The fact that you are working with a solution partner, but they're doing it all remotely across such a complex and large rollout. That is really impressive. That is really impressive.
We did the Jira deployment in Jira, of course. So the entire roadmap and process, we sprinted that through Jira as well. So yeah, we used our own tool.
Amazing. And you mentioned one of my favorite words, Confluence. So tell me a little bit more about how Confluence and Jira Service Management work together. I think you mentioned training as an example, and that's where a lot of the documentation is stored. Is that one of the use cases for Confluence?
It is. We use that to store process and training material, but it also goes a lot further than that for us. Again, as we were talking earlier about social media, we maintain a large set of technological documents around how we produce the various things that we make. And ad units change constantly. And that was another one of our real big pain points that we were experiencing prior to deploying the Atlassian suite. We were struggling to keep pace with the constant changing technical specs around our ad units. And that was one of the great things about Confluence, was we were able to put all that material inside Confluence, and then we have people that maintain that knowledge set. And then when we order an ad unit, we just reference through a Confluence link inside Jira out to the tech specs, which we maintain in Confluence, so that when the team that's making the ad itself needs to know what the various creative and technological specifications are around something, they can just access it in Confluence in real time.
Oh, that's amazing. Sort of a true heartbeat of a creative organization with JSM and Confluence working together. This, to me, Mitch, sounds like true enterprise service management across your organization. Would you characterize it that way?
I would, and I'll preface that with the idea that, when we first did this, I wasn't really terribly excited about service management and service desk, and that was a huge mistake on my part. I'll be very honest about it. And ISOS kept coming back to me and saying, no, 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 you need to do this as well, and here's why. And I was always, we'll get to that, and I wish that I had done it earlier, because once we actually turned that on and integrated that into our process, that was probably one of the biggest breakthroughs, if not a bigger breakthrough, that we actually had. We were already, in a lot of ways, within CBS marketing, working in a lot of codified processes with some technological support around project management, but adding service management on top of that was a game changer. And the reason it was, the reason that was the case was the external requests that come at us are unbelievable, and they're constant and they're growing. And it's like people reach out to us, and our PR department will say, hey, I need this. And our interactive department will reach out and ask for that. And that was all done by email and by Slack and by phone call. And the moment we added service management on top of that, it was a huge game changer, because now they either know to go to the service desk, or when they come to us in a way and ask for something, we just send them to the service management portal. They put in their request, and that immediately funnels that directly into the production workflow in a seamless way. And it's transparent to them, and actually also gives them insight into the status of their requests. And so once they start using it, they love it, because they just look at their list of requests with us and they know the exact status of everything and who is doing what. It really, really, really is the cherry on the top of an amazing suite of products that allows us to close that final link to our clients and to the teams that work with us externally to help us get them what they need.
Oh, that's incredible. Work is transparent, work is open, and everyone is sort of on the same page in terms of status. Can you quantify the productivity or efficiency improvements, even directionally, as a result of implementing Jira Service Management, sort of before and after?
I think two things that have come from this is, for the first time, I've been with the company for over 15 years and working for CBS Marketing, and for the first time ever, we, because of the Atlassian suite, we are able to get a measure of, we call it our ins and outs. That's how we refer to it internally. We now, for the first time, have a very accurate way to measure our inputs and our outputs. And we never had that before. There was a whole team that spent a lot of time digging through a lot of systems to figure out what was asked of us and what we generated from it. And now we have access to all of that information in a very granular way that we didn't have before. And I can't get too into the specifics of it, because some of that is the secret sauce about how we work. But we have realized sizable increases in our throughput and our bandwidth through the use of these tools. And we now measure that and quantify it, and then work with that data to figure out how to increase throughput and increase velocity constantly, which is one of the hallmarks of the Agile methodology. And we're now able to apply that to creative organizations as well, so that we can iterate, and we do iterate constantly our processes and our workflows, so that we have we find a better way of working.
Having worked with lots of different agencies in my career, one of the biggest challenges that I always observe is capacity planning. I have to imagine when workflows get automated and work gets more quantified, that at least some of that has become easier for you guys. Has that been the case?
It's absolutely the case. Just the, and it seems like such a small thing to probably the people that are listening to this, but just having a backlog, and every one of the key teams that's doing things that contribute to the whole has that backlog, measuring those inputs, planning how and when they're going to get done, looking at the status of the stuff that's actively in the system and who is working on what, begins to give us exact insight into these things that we never did have before. And that allows us to look at trends, and we're already doing that. We're 3 years into using this in a really active way across the entire team, and we are already seeing changes in how we produce things and changes in where we're using the creative that we generate and where it's most effective and where we place that one single piece of creative across multiple platforms and the impact that that has on our production capacity and managing our team's output.
You already have so much success behind you, but I have to imagine there's more opportunity ahead. Give us a sense of what's next for CBS and Jira Service Management.
As I mentioned earlier, we started later with service management, and we started with it to order office supplies, but it has grown to be so much more for us. And it has quickly for us become a way to connect with our clients. As we offer marketing support across CBS, and we use it as a method of communicating with them, allowing them to track their work. It's how we interact with them to get assets. It's giving them visibility into the status of the creative that they've ordered with us. So we see service management continuing to grow for us whenever we identify a touch point within marketing that we need a simple way for people to interact with us, we usually go to service management almost immediately as that method. So as we continue to identify new ways to use service management as they offer more features, we very quickly usually use that as the tool that we plug in to enable those relationships with our clients. I'll give you a quick example. Our production team already, as I've mentioned earlier, already has a very agile method of working because those are highly codified processes that they work with. But we added a service desk for them because what we found kept happening is they were getting their one-off requests were growing as well as the number of things that they were producing and the different ways that they were producing them. So rather than take those one-offs through email, we now have a service desk, and that service desk sits alongside with the Jira project, and the team just quickly plugs the service desk request. The team quickly plugs in the service management request into the known ticket that they had used, and they process that ticket again through and then link it back to the service management process to get the one-off request out to the customer. So it's a terrific tool. I'll say, what I like to say to people is, it's a terrific tool, even if you have a highly established Jira workflow. Having a service desk alongside to create tickets for things that don't fit into your normal workflow are really, really valuable because you can plug the service desk quickly in to your normal Jira process to generate and service one-offs.
It sounds to me like an incredible amount of empowerment, lots of autonomy, but at the same time, you have this structured coordination, sort of the best of both.
Exactly. And to your point, that's one of the things that we love about the Atlassian suite is that we are able to identify, for lack of a better word, guardrails, and we allow our teams to alter their processes pretty much on their own. Certain things obviously rise up into an admin level of stuff, but this is administration that we maintain within CBS marketing. And so the team that's tasked with keeping Jira running and planning the roadmap about how Jira works for us, the teams come to them and go, we want to make this change to our workflow. And we do these processes very quickly, sometimes within a day, by just having the Jira team come together, look at its impact across the wider ecosystem, implement the change in a sandbox, test it quickly, and then just turn it on. So if a team wants to make a change to how we do something, we do that very, very, very quickly because it's okay. It's, because, we bias to action and not being afraid to break things, knowing that we can undo it very quickly and get back to where we were the day before.
So Mitch, you've had an incredible amount of success. Still feels like there's a huge roadmap ahead of you, but your story is going to be inspiring to lots of teams, particularly non-technical teams who are going through a similar journey as you. Any advice for those teams as they think about or as they're in the midst of rolling out Jira Service Management, particularly for non-tech teams? Anything that you would highlight or recommend or guidance you'd give them?
I think the biggest piece of advice that I would give around this is go into it with an open mind. you have to be willing to look at what you do and break it down into the essence of how it is that you do your work. And when you do that, you'll begin to learn a lot about how things work. And I'll just give you a really quick example. For us, a piece of creative has a beginning and an end. And we call that flight begins and flight ends. And that's when it starts and that's when it ends. And what we discovered when we were doing our analysis was even within our own teams, we all referred to that in a very different way. And when we came to an agreement as a team that we were going to start to always talk about those two little pieces of data in the exact same way, that began to give us breakthroughs into how we could work, because we were starting to quantify and identify taxonomy about the ways that we did work, and then how we could fit that into the Jira and Atlassian tool set. And then once we began to do that, we began to see similarities in our processes and similarities in the Jira tools. And that insight was the key. And then when we were working with our solution provider, they were able to help us understand that's an issue, that's an epic, that's a sprint. That's a sprint planning session. That's a postmortem on a sprint. And that insight, that's knowledge, and that belongs over in Confluence. And oh, that's a service management ticket, and so we began to be able to put all this together in a way that suddenly began to get, that's a workflow, and we had never looked at our work in that way before. And it was a really eye-opening experience, because when you start to do that, you start to see similarities, and that's how your creative team can suddenly become agile, because you start to see the similarities between the agile methodology and doing creative. And that's how you begin to improve your velocity and improve your throughput, and create an optimized process.
Wow, that is incredible. What I heard from you is, look at how you do work today, deconstruct that, look at how it maps to how the software tools and products from Atlassian operate, find a great solution partner, and you begin to harmonize work across teams.
Exactly.
If you don't mind, I'm going to borrow some of those best practices and probably bring them into our marketing organization at Atlassian. I just love the way that you've looked at that and how work has really evolved from fragmented ways of working now with Jira Service Management, such a high velocity way of working. That's fantastic. All right, Mitch, I've got a really important question now. Are you ready for it?
Yeah, go for it. Hit me up.
What are your favorite show or shows on CBS?
Wow, no, that's a tough one. There are a lot of great shows on CBS, and we're having another great year this year, which is really heartening. I would have to say that my favorite show on CBS is Young Sheldon. Young Sheldon is a beautiful, beautiful story about a family, and it's a family of people that are different. And them overcoming their differences through love is probably one of the best things that we've got on our air right now. And the cast is just so spectacular. They fill the roles so beautifully. And as a Texan, I see so much similarity in my youth, growing up in East Texas. So if you have never checked out Young Sheldon, I'd really recommend that you do so.
So Mitch, my favorite is The Late Late Show with James Corden, mainly because I'm a night owl and it keeps me entertained sort of well past the time I should be going to bed, but I don't because I stay up for James Corden.
Yeah, I actually work in the same building where they tape the Corden show, and it's really great to sometimes we can actually hear the party atmosphere going on upstairs. They're a couple of floors above us, but it's a live audience, and it's really, really a great show, and we're really honored that James Corden is on CBS.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, now I'm really envious of your job, Mitch. Mitch, thank you so much for joining us to share the story about CBS, the marketing group, your role and the impact that you've had, and really how you've empowered your organization through Jira Service Management to work in a high velocity way. It's been a true pleasure to have you here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. And big thanks to everybody at Atlassian for an amazing set of tools that have, in so many ways, changed how we work.
Fantastic. And look forward to speaking to you again soon, Mitch. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Robert.